everybody, Gina DeLuca here. All right, so today I'm going to be using the same color palette that I used in the last video, but I'm going to use my regular measuring cup, and I'm going to do a spiral pour and see how it comes out differently. Show you the dried piece from last time. Some really cool things going on. Hopefully those colors show up. It's so hard, but there is some like super cool oil slick action going on in there, which I absolutely love. And as you will hear briefly, I used all matte products, so it appears very matte. This is the liquid mirror, which has a crazy shimmer to it, even unvarnished. It's wild, but hopefully some of that color is showing up. So I wanted to see how that came out using my regular techniques. I changed a lot. So, you know, that's the best way to do an experiment, is to just change one thing at a time so you have a lot of controls. But I changed a whole bunch of things, and so, you know, I got a very different result. But let's see what happens when I do this, you know, the way that I typically do. So what we have, I have a bunch of this little piggy pigments, which I have mixed while wearing a mask. Always wear a mask when you are working with pigments. I added some golden pouring medium and matte to the bottom of the cup, and then I add the pigment. Then I add some golden heavy gel matte until I get the consistency of a tube paint, and then I add Floetrol. So that is how these pigments are mixed. I cannot tell you how much pigment I use. I eyeball it. I don't weigh it. I don't measure. I'm not sure. You know, you want to use enough that your pigments show up. But obviously, you know, you want to be frugal about it. It doesn't really require a tremendous amount. For these cups, these are, I think, 5-ounce cups. I have these little stir sticks, and I kind of just did 2 scoops with the stir stick, and they're not even like full, you know, heaping scoops. So I'd say less than a tablespoon probably in these cups. So that is how the pigments are mixed. The liquid mirror was mixed. Did I thicken that up? I think I did. I think I thickened this up a little bit with the gel medium, and then added Floetrol to that. So that was also the matte gel. My background / base coat color is Amsterdam in Permanent Blue Violet. That I have mixed just with Floetrol. I do 1 part paint, maybe like 3 parts Floetrol for the Amsterdam. You can really get away with 3 to 4 parts even, as opposed to some other paints. You know, they're not quite as highly pigmented, so you can only do like 1 to 2. If you're using craft paint, you kind of want to do a 1 to 1. This is the Folk Art Treasure Gold and Antique Copper, and this is a really cool color. It's from some directions it's purple, and from others it is copper. So it's a color shift. Love that. The pigments I have from this little piggy are Golden Peach, Persephone, Algae, and Aquamarine. The consistency that we are working with. This is about a 2 on my consistency scale. It is making a mound, but it disappears quickly. It is making a nice, thin, even stream off of my stick. If it gets thick and then thin and thick again, your consistency is inconsistent and you need to keep on mixing. Before we get started, have you seen the Fluid Art inspiration cards? If you have, you can fast forward about a minute, but if you have not, what we have are 52 cards. There are 42 technique cards, and each technique card has an associated video here on YouTube that gives you the exact paint, brand, color, the consistency, the recipe, of course the technique, all of the things that I cannot fit onto a card. This is the painting in this video. This box contains a tip for this particular technique, and here at the bottom you have the color palette that was used in this painting. And then these two boxes can be used together as two color palette, or you can build off of those colors. And there are also 8 bonus color palette cards. Each one has 5 color palettes. You can use all of the colors or just some of the colors. Mix and match the bonus color palette cards with the technique cards, and you have more combinations than you could ever paint in a lifetime. These are available at my website, ginadeluca.net, and also at amazon.com. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is put some paint in my pouring cup because I have a tendency to pour my base coat, and then sometimes I don't leave enough for my pour. That just eliminates that problem. And I'm going to reserve a bit in the cup here for the top of my pour cup, and also in case I need to zhuzh up the corners or the edges, so that the paint slide around more easily. The reason that we lay down a base coat is because we want the paints to slide around easily and evenly, and if you do not have a base coat, the first thing that sticks to the canvas is going to be the paint that hits it first. And if that is from your poured puddle, the edges are going to stick first, and then the center is going to roll over those edges. And sometimes, especially in a straight pour, some of the coolest stuff happens on the edges, and then you would lose that. I like to give myself as many options for my composition as possible. That is another reason, that is one of the reasons why I use a color for my base coat that is also in my painting. Another reason for that is there will be tiny little bubbles in my base coat, and I will pop them, but I will not be popping all of them. There's just really no way to make sure that that happens. So you will have these bubbles coming up through your pour, and it will be bringing paint with it. Now, that is kind of the magic of straight pours. That's how you get these cells. However, you don't want your the colors, those little teeny tiny cells that pop up, they're not going to stretch. They're just going to kind of be in the way, and if it's a color that's not in my painting, I'm going to feel like I need to go fix that. So this just eliminates that, and you'll see that I've already covered the edges. The reason that I do that is my mixture that I'm working with, old Bernie 2 times, never starts first try. I am using Flowtron, and I am using a thin mix. And so what happens is sometimes it doesn't give the best coverage on the side, and so I just paint that first, and then I don't have to worry about it later. All right, my base coat is down, and I'm going to put some paint in a cup. Always check your consistency before adding to your pour cup. The sauce may thicken upon standing. All All right, so start with the golden peach. Now the antique copper. And now for the aquamarine. Persephone. This dries very, very different than how it appears in the cup. I mean, a lot of these pigments will, because Floetrol has a milky appearance. And so it's going to change how it looks in your cup. But it looks kind of orange here, but it dries to a really beautiful magenta color. And now for the algae. And for the liquid mirror, I am going to pour this from up high. I want this to incorporate throughout this whole cup, and some of it will end up at the bottom. Oh, almost missed the cup. Okay, and I'm going to add just a bit of my base coat slash background to this. So the concept here, matte paints and glossy paints. So this Amsterdam is going to be more glossy than all of these other paints. And what happens is the matte paints have a hydrophobic effect. They push that glossy paint away, and that is how we get cells in a straight pour without using any silicone. Okay, I can see things are starting to bubble up here, so let's make a mess, shall we? And I am going to try to spin this in the most uniform way possible. Trying to stay in the middle, trying to keep my pour steady and my spin steady. I've had a lot of folks tell me that they have a hard time with this technique. It does take some practice. It can be kind of frustrating sometimes. And hopefully that liquid mirror made it to the bottom of my cup, so it'll give me something very cool to look at in the center. Give me a focal point. I'm seeing a good bit of that golden peach, which I love, against this purple, so that is pleasing. As I get towards the bottom of my cup, I will spin slower and I get closer to the canvas, so I have more control. The center, the very end of this cup, this is important. It is important because, oh, dirty rat. Because it's going to be the focal point. It's going to be the part that's going to get stretched the most. So I try to be careful and not do something like what I just did. I'm not sure if the white made it to the bottom. I'm not seeing it, or the liquid mirror, I should say. Trying to be very patient here, just in case. All right, I am not, and I just stuck my finger in it. Okay, well, there we go. Yes, be very careful with your center. Make sure that you spin the thing the wrong way and that you stick your finger in the middle of it. Those are all very key, important steps in creating whatever this is going to wind up being. Gonna pop the bubbles. I mean, I know the liquid mirror is in there somewhere, so I'm just gonna be patient, see what happens. I am seeing some really beautiful blending of some of these colors here. This technique does create a lot of bubbles, but again, that's kind of your friend because it's going to bring out paint from the underlying layers, and those layers that are matte, when it reacts with this purple, you can see these little teeny tiny cells, they grow, they get bigger. So we're going to be patient. Be patient. Let your paint puddle percolate. Let those cells grow before you tilt or spin, and you will get bigger cells. Would you get cells if you just tilt it right away? Yes, you would. You would still get cells. You get pop-up cells. But I like the look of boulder cells. I like that 3D look that they get. It's super cool. I think I see the antique purple doing some really cool things there. That paint, that folk art, the antique copper, really, I have gotten some of the most interesting cells from that paint. Keep popping the bubbles. And I'm going to try to keep this moving a bit. The canvas has been leveled to the table. However, the spinner it's got a little wobble to it, so it's not exactly level. So just try to keep it moving so it's not just pulling in one direction. I see this here needs some zhuzhing up. So what you'll notice is sometimes if it starts to look like it's starting to dry up, which the corners and the sides will have a tendency to do as we let this paint puddle percolate. But if that happens, it will not spin off at an even rate, and you can have areas where it fights you. So you wind up with some wobbles in your pour. Say if there was a dry spot on the side here, you would wind up with little U shapes where it's not going over the sides as easily. And these paints will eventually, you know, as they're sitting, they'll get a skin, especially the sides will need to be touched up before I spin. Why do I spin instead of tilting? It depends. Sometimes I opt to tilt. If I were to do this and my center is very off center, then I might just opt to tilt and go for something more organic. But in something like this, where it's nice and symmetrical, makes my ADHD brain very happy. I like to spin it so that it is nice and uniform in the way that it comes off of the canvas. All right, I'm going to touch up these sides a bit because they have started to set up, and I don't want my paint to not flow evenly. So what I'll do, sometimes I just put a little bit of my palette knife here. Oh, I had someone give me some grief the other day about, you know, the messiness of my workspace, because I had, you know, these papers on this side here already have paint drips on them, and, you know, why am I not putting more effort into my presentation of my videos? Well, I put these videos up because I want to teach people how to do this. I want to give people an outlet to have a creative outlet. And so, you know, I started putting these tutorials up. This is going to sound possibly callous, but I don't really care. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't want to keep wasting paper or, you know, puppy pads, or I reuse everything as much as I can. I reuse my gloves. When I'm varnishing, I will reuse the glove. I'll let it dry. I'll turn it inside out and I'll use it again. I don't like being wasteful. I don't know about y'all, but I don't have the money to just throw away, to be wasteful like that. So sometimes you're going to see drips from old paintings. You know, I mean, unless somebody wants to be my benefactor and, you know, just send me like scads of money. Well, this is kind of how it's going to be. And I'm sorry if that really, really bothers you. My apologies. Some folks are very, very good at, you know, making it look like a professional studio, and good for them, and I admire them for that. I am working in my basement, and, you know, this is not the ideal setup for me, but I'm happy to have a roof over my head, and I'm happy to have a much better landlord than I had at my last place. I won't get into that, but let's just say big improvement here. All right. I think we're going to be about ready to give this a twirl. All right. All seems tedious, I know, but all of these little things, you know, these little steps, the covering the edges before putting on your base coat, and making sure your edges are touched up before you spin, and like all of that is just going to improve the odds of you coming up with a painting that makes you happy. All right, one more pop of the bubbles. I do not typically torch after I tilt, unless I have a big blank area and I want more cells to pop up. I don't torch after I tilt. I don't want air bubbles coming up from the base coat, and I just, and when I'm using Floetrol, I don't have to worry about it pitting. If I was using a glossy pouring medium, then I would probably wind up with pits, you know, something like Liquitex. Just the way that it dries, if there are air bubbles in there, you see them. But the way that Floetrol dries, it is self-leveling. That is kind of the purpose of it. And I'm going to give this a spin here. You don't have to spin fast. It's not necessary to spin fast. It'll get there. But Floetrol is a work time extender, and it helps your paint to self-level. So its original purpose was to be added to paints for painting a house. If you are using a roller or a brush, it helps to eliminate brush strokes. And also it helps to make the paint come out of the sprayers easier. All right, I'm going to recenter my center a bit. Okay, another spin. Yeah, people think that you need to like really spin this very fast. You don't. If you've ever had a painting that was not level, and you let it sit overnight and then you came back and you're like, what happened to my painting? That's probably what it was. It wasn't level, and over time it just travels on. All right. So this little corner here is kind of fighting a little bit, so let's do this. We'll just add some of these drips, and it's going to blend right in when I spin it again. The very, very corners, they always seem to need a little bit of love. We'll spin it again, just a bit. All right, slow down, slow down. Okay, I like this. I like what's happening. I don't want to change anything else. I don't want to lose this ring of cells. I am super curious to see what paints are doing this. Which ones, what's happening? Sometimes it's difficult to tell. And ironically, I do not have as much of the liquid mirror popping up as I have in pretty much all of the other paintings that I've done. But it is possible that that's what's attaching here. But I do see some popping up through here. And it looks like it's part of some of these rings. But then again, it's hard to tell because that aquamarine appears white until it dries. So, cat hair, cat hair. Danger, Will Robinson. Oh, you're rotten. I don't know how my cats aren't bald. It's a mystery. Okay. I am going to let this sit, and I will bring you in for a close-up. Back in a few. Okay, here it is. I am very, very happy with this piece, and I cannot wait to see it varnished, dried and varnished. These colors are going to change. Some of this orangish rust is going to be, that's the Persephone, so that's going to have a much more magenta vibe to it. The boulder cells are out of this world. I am so happy with how these cells came out, and I don't know if it is the liquid mirror that the pigment's attached to. I don't think it was the antique copper, not these cells. I feel like are the liquid mirror, and then these cells I feel like were the antique copper, these darker cells. So the pigments have attached. You can see some of that liquid mirror showing up at the end there. But this was a really wild result, even though, you know, I mean, I've done plenty of these spirals, but just the way that these cells look, gosh, I wish you could see. I don't know if there's like any way to really get it to focus on the blingy parts, so you can see how these how it kind of has the shimmer. Focus, please focus, please focus. But these boulder cells look super 3D. I am very happy, very, very happy with this piece. So, I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do like, share, and subscribe. All that good stuff. If you are subscribed, please make sure that you have clicked the bell so that you receive notifications. Why is this not wanting to focus? So that you receive notifications when I do post new content. Facebook or YouTube changed some things, and folks aren't getting the alerts. Less than 1% of my views are from subscribers, so something is going amiss. It is just making me so frustrated that I can't get this to focus and show you the bling. Do check out the description box below for links to my PayPal tip jar if you feel so inclined, my website, ginadeluca.net, where you can find my art and music and fluid art inspiration cards for sale. Also, you will find my affiliate links and coupon codes. Fluidart.co is one of the companies that I am affiliated with. That is where you get these magnificent piggies. The liquid mirror came from there, the Amsterdam paints. They have lots of groovy stuff there. And you will also find the link to our Facebook group. Go make some art. Join us there. Post your masterpieces. Ask your questions. Get some inspiration. Did I say ask questions? Did I say it twice? I don't know. But, gosh, look at that. It's just so cool looking how those cells are so, like, almost evenly spaced. Like they were laid out stones. That is trippy. What else? What else is there? I think that's it. I don't know. I forget something pretty much every time, so, you know, that's just how I roll. But there it is. That's it for me. I hope y'all have a beautiful day. Now go make some art.